All right, hey, good morning, Mr. Robinson here. Same thing, same thing. Today will be the same. All right, I'm going to go through some slides and explain to you guys what's going on now. Look, this is starting a new unit. Okay, the new unit is called Imperialism. So I'm going to explain a couple things to you now. What I'm going to start to do on Canvas in order to make it easier for you guys is I'm putting modules by the week. So basically, when you go to Canvas, it'll have the module for this week. This is week 6, I think. Module for this week, and then it'll have 5 pages. On each page will be linked. It'll be the instruction for the assignment, the instructions for the day, and then the assignment will be linked to. All right. So this way, I won't have to send out an email every day explaining to you guys exactly what I want you to do. You just basically go to Canvas, find the date that coincides, like the day's the 28th of September, and then you click on that page, and then it'll have the assignment with the link on it. All right. I don't know how else to make it easier. I also try to put the videos on there. So, anyways, when you're looking at this picture here, you're looking at there are a couple things going on. So you have what looks like Uncle Sam here on the left. Now on the right is the president at the time, William McKinley, and the caption says, "Well, I hardly know which to take first." And then you have in the Caribbean, well, not necessarily the Caribbean, but you have Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and other islands on there. And he's basically, Uncle Sam is looking at that thinking, all right, I hardly know which to take first. The idea of imperialism is to extend influence over people that are outside of the country. So America has already, throughout this course, America has expanded westward expansion with that transcontinental railroad and those Plains Indian Wars. The whole first unit was about. Now the country is trying to expand overseas. So they're going to expand in a few different places. The places we're going to talk about on here are Cuba, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, uh, as well as there's some stuff that goes on in China as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. Workday, right? Imperialism and America. American expansion. So America has kind of been growing up, expanding itself throughout the continent. Now it wants to announce its presence on the world stage. So America needs to establish colonies overseas. That's the idea behind this. And that's just a definition of imperialism there. The policy which stronger nations extend their economic, political, military control over weaker territories. That's the idea of imperialism. So basically, to go overseas and take over or colonize an area. Europe had been doing this for several hundred years. Now America wants to get in on the game. Global competition. So, like I said, European nations have been establishing colonies for centuries, several hundred years. Um, and specifically, Europe had been doing this a lot in Africa by the early 20th century. And we're going to look at in the next unit imperialism as well and how it contributed to the First World War. Remember, there are 2 world wars, how it contributed to the first one. Here are factors that fueled American imperialism. So, desire for military strength. So, to grow its military, grow its navy. New markets to sell American products in. So, if we go overseas and expand, maybe colonize Hawaii, get influence in Cuba and Puerto Rico, we can sell our products to those people. And then the third one is what is known as belief in cultural superiority, or something such as social Darwinism. The fact that, hey, we're going to take you over just because we're more advanced, we're better than these other lesser countries. All right, notice I said lesser. That's the whole idea behind imperialism. All right, Europe had been doing that forever, and as far as coming to the New World, taking over the New World because Europe believed that their culture was better or more advanced than these places that were colonized. Military strength. So United States, remember these other countries, these other nations they're building up their military at this time. Now the United States wants to announce its presence on the global stage. So hey, we want to build up our military as well. And the way we show off building up our military is we can go overseas and take over other countries. All right, that's the idea behind it. America still does some of this today. Okay, so for instance, I've been all over South America. I've been to the Middle East. I would have never done that had I not been in the military. And the reason America still has a presence in the Middle East is because some of these same reasons for imperialism, places to sell our goods, all right, and then showing off our military strength. So, particularly the United States Navy at this time, the Admiral Alfred T. Mahan, he convinced that America needed to build new modern battleships and then show off those battleships around the world. So one this is important. The USS Maine was one that was built, and there's a certain incident that happens with the USS Maine, which we're going to look at tomorrow, which was it was a big deal. Okay, same, not unlike your teacher. The guy's a big deal. Thirst for new markets. I mentioned this before. At the time, with that industrialization that had went on in America, America was able to mass produce products now, far more than American citizens could consume. So, because the country's producing all these products, well, now we got to find a place to sell them. So let's expand our influence overseas. That's the idea behind it. Also, to get raw materials, because a lot of materials that the U.S. uses aren't produced here. For instance, one reason that people say the United States is involved in the Middle East now is because of the oil. Oil is mass produced in the Middle East, and so America is involved over there, some would say, in order to have a hand in that oil trade, to get some oil from over there. So the United States sees these places as places where they can get their hands on those raw materials. So that's important as well. Cultural superiority. All right. The cultural superiority is, again, applying that social Darwinist philosophy with the belief in racial superiority. So social Darwinism, which we studied a little bit in the last semester, is we studied it in an industrialization context, meaning that those captains of industry, those robber barons, believed that they were richer or superior to the workers just because the survival of the fittest, right? They applied Darwin's philosophy of evolution and survival of the fittest to a social sense, meaning that that's why they were at the top of the food chain, so to speak. Same thing that would applies to the belief for imperialism, that the United States can take over these other lesser areas because we are more evolved. We have evolved more, and survival of the fittest. We're just better. That's the idea behind it. Now, something else is important is this idea called the white man's burden. The United States has a responsibility to spread Christianity and civilization and democracy to the world's inferior people. It's called the white man's burden. Notice a lot of those things I put in quotations because just because some of these places didn't believe, some of these places such as maybe Hawaii or the Philippines, they didn't necessarily believe in Christianity, didn't mean that they weren't civilized. But that's what the United States tended to believe, that they weren't civilized. So we have to spread civilization and democracy to those people. It's called the white man's burden. That's the the kind of the idea of the phrase we use for it. These are areas that where the United States expanded. All right, so kind of predating the time where we're studying around the turn of the century, we look at the 1867 purchase of Alaska. So the United States is starting to expand here, going into Alaska, buying it for 2 cents an acre. 1898, the United States annexed Hawaii. And why? So reasons for annexing Hawaii. One is because they saw Hawaii as a naval base. And boom, they built Pearl Harbor there in Hawaii. And we're going to study Pearl Harbor with a certain incident that happened in Pearl Harbor later in the semester. But they built a naval base. All right, so that has to do with military strength. They used Hawaii to import sugar, all right, because the United States would not mass produce sugar, so we got sugar from Hawaii. That has to do with thirst for new markets, bringing in those raw materials. And then the United States overthrew the Hawaiian government and set up its own government. All right, so we believe that because they had a monarchy, that their monarchy was not democratic. So we're going to set up our own government. That's basically what happened in Hawaii. Hawaii continued. So the United States basically orchestrated a coup in Hawaii. They overthrew the king, the help of the American troops. They made a treaty that basically the president refused to recognize the treaty, but it turns out later that the United States just takes over Hawaii. All right, and eventually Hawaii is going to become a state. So what happened essentially was the United States just they orchestrated a coup in Hawaii and then they annexed it and took it over. So this is the assignment. Now, this is just an example of the assignment. I'm just going to assignment is on Canvas. Okay, you have to look at 2 roots or causes for. So you have 3 of the causes here. You have cultural, political, and economic, and then 2 examples of that. All right. 2 examples of the economic. So one would probably be thirst for new markets. One would be to obtain raw materials. Cultural superiority. That's what we're talking about, that white man's burden, social Darwinism, right? All this stuff is on the PowerPoint. I'll also see if I can link the section in the book where it comes from as well to help you guys out. And this is a very simple assignment. If you just look at the video here, you should be able to answer those questions as well.